In the bottomless demon abyss, legend has it that a malevolent goddess from ancient times is sealed at the bottom, and the resentment she carries has yet to dissipate. Each year, the great families and sects of Longyuan City must perform an offering ritual to appease the wrath of the evil goddess. At this moment, a sect is offering a sacrifice to the goddess. Zhou Rongyi throws his brother, Zhou Yu, to the ground and states that he is incapable of competing in the martial arts tournament for the family, has abused his own sister-in-law to calm the goddess's anger, and is simply an idiot, no longer considering him his brother. Bound, Zhou Yu yells for Zhou Rongui to stop spouting nonsense and asserts that his strength is clearly superior to his brother's, making him the one who should represent the family in the tournament. He then accuses Zhou Rongui of failing to defeat him and conspiring with his wife to frame him, calling him a despicable person. Zhou Rongyi, accompanied by several others, asks Zhou Yu if he has any proof of his claims and calls him a mere lowborn bastard. He then steps on Zhou Yu's face, saying that he will become his stepping stone, as that is the greatest contribution he can make to the Zhou family. After the blood sacrifice, the blessing of the evil goddess will grow even stronger. With those words, he kicks Zhou Yu into the depths of the demon abyss. As he falls, Zhou Yu shouts that he will remember what his brother did for the rest of his life. In the midst of the fall, he begins to recall his mother, who was a concubine of the Zhou family and never received much recognition. She eventually fell gravely ill and passed away. Zhou Yu remembers how hard he worked to cultivate, hoping to gain his father's attention and do something to honor his mother's memory. The Grand Martial Arts Competition takes place every 10 years, with the winner receiving cultivation resources granted by the imperial city of Tianyu, an invaluable opportunity to grow stronger. Zhou Yu knows he was the ideal candidate to represent the family, but his older brother, driven by envy and jealousy, falsely accused him of assaulting his sister-in-law. As a result, the Zhou family sentenced him to death and offered him as a sacrifice to the evil goddess. While continuing to fall into the abyss, he questions what he did wrong, whether illegitimate children truly have no chance, and if they are destined to be trampled and sacrificed forever. However, as he descends deeper into the abyss, Zhou Yu refuses to accept such a fate. At that moment, the evil goddess comments on how powerful his resentment is, something truly remarkable. Zhou Yu immediately asks whose voice he is hearing. The evil goddess responds, saying that although he is her sacrifice, he doesn't even know her name. She introduces herself as Tai Bai, the so-called malevolent goddess. She approaches him, and Zhou Yu quickly remarks that he expected her to be more ferocious and cruel, questioning what she plans to do now. Tai Bai replies that although he seems quite appetizing, she has a better idea. She proposes a deal. In exchange, she will give him the chance to take revenge on the Zhou family. However, she emphasizes that they need to clarify a few things. She explains that from that moment forward, not only will his soul and life belong to her, but he will also be rejected by heaven and earth and hated by humans and gods. Zhou Yu shouts that he doesn't care if heaven, earth, gods, and humans reject him. As long as he can become strong, take revenge, and seek justice, he will be satisfied. The malevolent goddess then kisses him, sealing the deal. At that moment, Tai Bai begins to unleash her power and comments that Zhou Yu's body is very ordinary and weak, so she will first remodel it. As Zhou Yu undergoes the transformation, the evil goddess examines his meridians and notices they are blocked. With his qi in the dantian also congested, she says she will unblock everything at once, but warns him not to die from the pain during the process. Despite the intense pain, Zhou Yu declares that, to make the Zhou family pay the price, he won't be bothered by mere pain. After that, a strong power overflows from the demon abyss. Meanwhile, elsewhere, someone is declaring Zhou Ronggui's victory. He laughs and shouts, saying it was a breeze and that the Zhou family's spot in this year's tournament is his, and no one can argue otherwise. Some people comment that young Master Rongi is highly favored by the patriarch and question if anyone would be foolish enough to compete against him. Another person remarks that they heard Zhou Yu was killed for offending young Master Rongi. At that moment, someone bursts into laughter and tells Zhou Rongi that his skills are weak and that he can barely withstand a single blow. Even if he enters the tournament, he'll only embarrass himself and bring shame to the family. The crowd quickly realizes it's Zhou Yu and questions if he wasn't sacrificed and why his hair is turned white. Zhou Rongi laughs and claims that Zhou Yu is the scoundrel who tried to assault his own sister-in-law. The young master demands Zhou Yu kneel and apologize to her, stating that if he doesn't deserve to be part of the family. Internally, however, Zhou Rongi wonders how Zhou Yu is still alive. Zhou Yu explains that on the day he was accused of assaulting his sister-in-law, she clearly threw herself at him and wouldn't let go. He even claims that her ability to seduce people is impressive, and then asks Zhou Rongi how many men she's already lured into bed. He also questions whether Zhou Rongi is blind for not seeing what's right in front of him. Furious, Zhou Rongi asks how Zhou Yu dares to be so disrespectful toward his wife, and says it seems he has no choice but to teach him a lesson. He then releases his power and tells Zhou Yu that even if he escaped death, he must be exhausted. With that, he lunges at Zhou Yu, shouting that he doesn't stand a chance. However, Zhou Yu blocks the young master's strike with just one hand. Gathering energy in the other, he delivers a powerful punch to Zhou Rongi, slamming him forcefully against the wall. The cultivators are shocked and begin to wonder if what they are witnessing is real. As the young master was defeated with just one blow, Zhou Yu approaches and says that they've always called him useless. He then delivers another powerful punch, sending Zhou Rongi crashing into another wall. Terrified, Rongi screams and asks what Zhou Yu is doing, begging him not to come any closer. At that moment, their father arrives, shouting for them to stop. They are surprised. Zhou Yu immediately clarifies that he has never done anything to damage the Zhou family's reputation and that they are slandering him, especially Zhou Rongi. He then states that with Rongi's current abilities, he wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow from him. Therefore, Zhou Yu should be the Zhou family's representative in the tournament. The family head becomes serious and tells Zhou Yu that he disregards his elder brother and violates the moral principles of humanity. He states that the family has already decided that Zhou Yu is unworthy of representing them in the tournament and orders him to leave and never return. Embarrassed, Zhou Yu says that it seems he now understands everything. The truth itself doesn't matter, nor does who is stronger or weaker. At that moment, Zhou Ronggui's wife approaches him and shouts at Zhou Yu, asking how he dares to harm his older brother. She says that because of this, the patriarch will certainly expel him from the family. Zhou Yu begins to laugh and states that the family patriarch cannot distinguish right from wrong and that they are all parasites acting tyrannically. He concludes by saying that the Zhou family is nothing more than a pile of trash. He then grabs the family totem and breaks it, declaring that from that moment on, he, Zhou Yu, severs all ties with the Zhou family. He then leaps into the air and tells those who insulted him in the past to prepare their necks because he will personally cut them. He declares that sooner or later, this debt will be settled with the Zhou family. The patriarch, furious, shouts and calls Zhou Yu an ungrateful son and sinful beast. Zhou Ronggi's wife calls out to the patriarch, begging him to save their son, as the situation is critical. The patriarch quickly approaches his son, thinking that saving him is the priority. He concludes that they need to investigate Zhou Yu's unexpected return, as his survival seems like an incredible stroke of luck. As Zhou Yu walks through the forest, he contemplates that, with his current strength, eliminating Zhou Ronggi wouldn't be a problem. However, he knows that facing Zhou Mu and the Zhou family elders would still be underestimating his own abilities. While thinking about the need to find a way to improve his skills quickly, he doesn't notice a leopard watching him from behind. Suddenly, the leopard leaps, startling Zhou Yu. He quickly realizes it's a hell-purple leopard and remembers hearing that this beast has a habit of devouring humans and can rival a seventh-layer warrior. The leopard roars and charges at Zhou Yu. Preparing himself, Zhou Yu thinks that if that trash, Zhou Rongyi, couldn't handle a single blow from him, he's curious to see if this beast will fare any better. He then activates his skill, Heavy Artillery Fist, and delivers a direct blow to the leopard. After defeating the hell-purple leopard, Zhou Yu feels pleased, knowing he just eliminated a creature capable of matching a seventh-layer warrior. He notices that ever since Tai Bai remodeled his body and unblocked his meridians, his body has become far stronger than before. He picks up the leopard and decides to cook and eat it that night by preparing a stew. At that moment, Tai Bai appears and tells him to wait, explaining that eating the meat directly would be a waste. She says she will teach him a more efficient method. Zhou Yu turns, startled, and asks the goddess where she came from. She makes a seal and tells him not to be alarmed, explaining that ever since they made the pact, their bodies are connected. She then uses the ancient evil goddess's sacrificial ritual and creates a blood chi spiritual pill. Zhou Yu is impressed and remarks that refining such a pill is extremely difficult and that its value is incredibly high. He recalls that, in the past, he simply didn't have the money to buy pills of such quality, and the family would never have used their stock on a bastard son like him. Tai Bai explains that this is what makes the ancient evil goddess's sacrificial ritual so remarkable, and, as a goddess, it's only natural that when sacrifices are offered, he would receive certain rewards. She then explains that, on the Tianwu continent, cultivators are revered. Warriors cultivate and strengthen their bodies by circulating qi through their meridians, and this cultivation method is called heavenly circulation. Tai Bai adds that the heavenly circulation can be used up to the level of 99 heavens of the celestial domain, but reaching that level is considered a legend. In the current world, the most powerful cultivators only reach 75 heavens, and those who achieve 50 heavens are already considered regional dominators. She then tells Zhou Yu that the blood chi spiritual pill she refined is perfect and free of impurities, making it safe to absorb. Zhou Yu recalls that Zhou Mu had surpassed 25 heavens long ago, and his power has become even more unfathomable in recent years. Therefore, Zhou Yu knows he must use every possible means to grow stronger. After consuming the pill, he advances to the seventh heaven of the celestial domain and acknowledges that he never would have achieved this without the blood chi spiritual pill. Tai Bai remarks that this is only the beginning, as long as he offers valuable enough sacrifices. She mentions that no matter how powerful the skills, artifacts, elixirs, or sacred beasts are, she can grant him anything. The Heavenly Demon Scroll, the Blood Sea Star Annihilation Art, the Celestial Hammer, the Small Green Bottles, the Immortal Annihilation Sword, the Nine Heavens Evil Art, the Heavenly Restoration Pill, the Bone Refinement Pill of Spiritual Purification, Demon Beasts, Bone Marrow Pills, and even the Purple Thunder Dragon. Tai Bai then reveals that she herself was sealed and had her body shattered. If she manages to recover her physical form, she will be able to open her celestial evil realm for him. She explains that within this secret realm, he will have everything he needs: a place to forge artifacts, an alchemy furnace to refine pills, a stargazing area to learn new skills, and a training arena to practice them. Approaching the Prota, she tells him that if he pleases her, she might even grant him extra benefits. Embarrassed, he responds that it won't be necessary. At that moment, the Prota hears someone crying for help. He immediately wonders if someone is being attacked by a wild beast and decides to check what's happening. Peeking from behind a tree, he notices that the voice sounds like a woman. A man is stepping on the woman's chest as she screams, asking why he is attacking her when she did nothing to him. The man laughs and tells her it was bad luck to be the daughter of the city lord, explaining that someone paid him a large sum to kill her. The woman starts crying out for help again, but the man says she can scream all she wants because they're in the middle of nowhere and no one will come to save her. At that moment, Yu appears with an imposing aura and tells the man that what he's doing isn't right and that he'd better leave the girl alone or face trouble. The man asks who Yu thinks he is and if he's trying to play the hero. Yu smiles and replies that the man isn't worthy of hearing his name, once again asking him to let the girl go. The cultivator laughs, calls Yu a kid, and tells him to stop pretending to be a hero. He says Yu looks like he's at most at the power level of 7 heavens, and asks if he really thinks he can save the damsel in distress, or if he's just crazy and wants to die. Without hesitation, the assassin charges at Yu using his 8 heavens power, Venomous Spirit Palm. Yu dodges the attacks while the enemy boasts that his skill is highly toxic and that even someone at the 9 heavens level wouldn't dare block it, assuring Yu that he will die without a burial. Yu thinks that his body, reconstructed by Tai Bai, is truly powerful. Observing the assassin's fighting style, he realizes that although the opponent has a higher power level, the quality of his chi is much inferior, and his techniques are full of flaws. Taking advantage of an opening, Yu delivers a punch square to the assassin's face, sending him flying backward. On the ground, the assassin groans in pain, and upon seeing Yu approach again, he mutters in disbelief that he was defeated by a mere cultivator of the 7 heavens. Yu steps on the assassin's hand. The girl, observing Yu's movements and combat skills, thinks that he is an incredible person, capable of defeating an 8 heavens assassin with just one strike. She reflects that if he hadn't shown up to save her, she would have been in serious trouble. Yu turns to the city lord's daughter and asks if the assassin had any accomplices. She responds that he was alone when he attacked her. She then introduces herself as Tang Yu and asks if he could share his name. Yu turns and, with a polite smile, introduces himself, saying he is just a traveler. He also suggests that, since the problem has been solved, she should return to the city quickly. Tang Yu runs up to Yu, grabs him, and asks if he could accompany her back to the city lord's residence. She explains that she will tell her father what happened and is certain that he will reward Yu generously. Yu recalls that, in recent years, the Zhou family has been secretly trying to draw the local powers to their side within the city lord's residence. He realizes that it seems they intend to overthrow the city lord and destroy the Tang family. Yu considers that supporting the city lord's residence would ruin years of planning by the Zhou family, and he's sure that Zhou Mu and the others would be furious. Moreover, he knows he's currently in a vulnerable position, and having the support of the Long Yuan city lord seems like a wise choice. He then tells Yu that it's fine, and that he will escort her back to the city. As soon as they arrive in Long Yuan City, at the city lord's residence, Tang Yu calls Yu and says she will introduce him to her father. He notices that the residence has many experts, comparable to the Zhou family. At that moment, Yu's sister appears and reprimands her, saying she's becoming increasingly insolent. She accuses Yu of sneaking out to play and even bringing a stranger home. Then, she asks who the man is and comments that he looks poor. This is Tang Zichen, Yu's older sister. Yu bows, introduces himself, and thanks Tang Yu for her kindness, apologizing for disturbing the city lord's residence. Zichen becomes intrigued by his surname and quickly asks about his connection to the Zhou family. He explains that he was originally part of the Zhou family's secondary branch, but has since severed all ties with them. Zichen laughs and asks if he was expelled from the family. She comments that the Zhou and Tang families have a long history of conflict and asks what he's doing there. Tang Yu grabs Yu's arm and asks her sister not to be so rude, emphasizing that he is their guest. She then tells the Prota to ignore her sister, explaining that Zichen has always been like this. At that moment, 2 people arrive. The sisters call out to their father and ask what happened. The city lord's bodyguard shouts that there were assassins, but then collapses on the ground. The sisters rush to their father, calling for a doctor urgently. Jo-yu becomes suspicious and thinks that within a single day, both the city lord's daughter and the city lord himself were attacked. He knows that if the news spreads, it will cause significant problems. After taking the city lord to his chambers, Dr. Chen begins examining him. Zikin, concerned, reflects on how her father, an expert with a power level of 20 heavens, could be injured so severely. Meanwhile, Yu Yu is overwhelmed with worry, thinking only that her father cannot die. The doctor sighs and reveals that the city lord has been poisoned and seriously injured. He explains that the poison has already spread through his body's meridians and is affecting his internal organs. He fears that there's nothing that can be done to save him. Zikin yells, questioning how the renowned doctor of Longyuan City could claim there's nothing to be done. She adds that if he needs rare ingredients, they can provide as much as necessary. Lowering his head, Chen clarifies that even with medicinal ingredients, the poison was inflicted by an expert with 20 heavens of power, and ordinary remedies won't be able to neutralize it. With a trembling voice, Zikin responds that this cannot be true and insists that her father will overcome it. Jo-yu reflects that Longyuan City is home to many prominent families and a solid foundation, and that the city lord's residence, with its power, has managed to maintain peace in the city. However, he knows that if the city lord dies, the major families will undoubtedly try to seize power, and the Zhou family will use the opportunity to expand its influence further. Understanding this, Yu knows he cannot allow the Zhou family's plans to succeed. He then calls out to the evil goddess and asks if she can hear him. She appears in his subconscious, smiling, and asks if he missed her. Yu tells her to stop joking and asks if she knows a method to treat the city lord's poisoning. Tai Bai laughs and asks who he thinks she is. She states that, as a goddess, she knows everything, including a simple detoxification method. However, she warns that due to Yu's current weak abilities, attempting to neutralize the poison could be risky and may even result in him being poisoned. She asks if he has the courage to try. Yu responds to the evil goddess, saying that he doesn't care about life or death and that taking a risk is insignificant. He declares that he cannot let the city lord die and give the Zhou family an opportunity to grow stronger. The doctor explains to Zikin that the city lord's poison cannot be fully neutralized, but with treatment, they might be able to delay his death for a few more days. However, he thinks that after the lord's death, the family residence will be destroyed and their fortune will not be spared. Therefore, he believes it's best to take advantage of the situation and make a good amount of money from the treatment. At that moment, Yu interrupts and tells the doctor that this won't be necessary. He asks to take care of the city lord's poison himself and assures them that he won't charge anything for the detoxification. The doctor, shocked and furious, shouts, asking who Yu thinks he is. He calls him an insolent brat and says that he, Chen, is a supreme doctor in the region. He then reiterates that he already said there's no other solution. Zichen, irritated, asks the Proto who gave him permission to speak. She says she found it very suspicious that he appeared at such a critical moment and asks if the Zhou family sent him as a spy to assess the situation. She then shouts for the guards, ordering them to arrest the Proto. She warns that if anything happens to her father, she'll personally tear him apart and use him as a sacrifice for the city lord's burial. The guards immediately respond, surrounding the Proto. Meanwhile, Dr. Chen angrily remarks that he initially intended to prescribe something to make the city lord more comfortable, but he didn't expect the lord's residence to allow a young fool to humiliate him. Therefore, he declares that he will no longer provide the prescription. Zikin approaches the doctor and insists that he cannot leave. Yu grabs his arm and pleads, saying their father desperately needs his help. Both sisters then shout at the Proto, telling him not to challenge the doctor and demanding that he kneel and apologize immediately. Chen wonders how a mere young man dares to act so arrogantly in front of him. He states that if Zhou Yu doesn't kneel and offer at least 100 or even 180 bows of apology, he shouldn't expect to get back up. The guards order Zhou Yu to kneel and apologize. However, Zhou Yu releases his power, knocking the guards away, and shouts that he's no spy from the Zhou family. He explains that he's severed all ties with them and nearly killed Zhou Rongyi. He adds that anyone can investigate if they don't believe him. He then shouts that the mediocre doctor present cannot cure the poison, but he can. If they don't believe him, he'll leave. With that, he begins to walk away. Tang Yuyu runs after him and asks if he really knows a way to cure her father's poisoning. Yu replies that he does. Yu turns to her sister and says that things have already reached this point, so they can't get any worse. She also mentions that Yu saved her, which makes her believe he's a good person who wouldn't harm anyone. Zikin yells to get her sister's attention, but then takes a deep breath and admits that, under the circumstances, they might as well let the Proto try to cure their father. At that moment, the doctor asks them to wait and wonders how the boy managed to convince the sisters so easily with just a few words. He explains that curing an illness and neutralizing poison isn't just a matter of martial ability. Even though the case seems hopeless, he doesn't believe a young man like the Proto has the means to cure the city lord. He then asks what they will do if Zhou Yu fails to cure him. Zhou Yu makes it clear that if he fails, he will take his own life as an apology and personally accompany the city lord to the underworld to serve him. Chen laughs and says that, in that case, it's fine, but internally, he thinks the boy is extremely arrogant because he knows the person who poisoned the city lord is at least a master at the 20th heaven. Even if a cure exists, he doubts that a mere 7th heaven master like Zhou Yu could handle it. Yu then asks the doctor what he will do if the Proto succeeds in curing the city lord. Chen responds that if Yu truly cures him, it will mean he is inferior in skill and, as recognition, he will become his disciple. The Proto remarks that he hasn't even decided if he'll accept Chen as his disciple. Then, Zhou Yu makes it clear that if he successfully cures the city lord, the doctor will have to kneel and bow 100 times. Chen thinks that if the boy loses, he'll pay with his life, but if he himself loses, all he'll have to do is kneel a few times. Realizing that the stakes aren't balanced, Chen is internally annoyed. Yu knows the old man is pretending to be angry, but can sense that, deep down, he's enjoying the situation. Zikin shouts for them to stop arguing, saying that everything has already been decided. Yu approaches the city lord and calls for the goddess to appear and help him. He places his hand on the girl's father, as Tai Bai explains that, originally, eliminating the toxins would require at least a cultivation level of the 20th heaven in the celestial domain. But since they have no other choice, she reveals that she's using the supreme ancient healing method. It doesn't take long for the poison to begin being extracted from the city lord's body. Yu realizes that the venom technique is extremely powerful and capable of condensing the poison into a physical form. He reflects that the person who poisoned the city lord is far more powerful than him, which is why even the divine doctor was at a loss. Yu understands that if it were anyone else, they would likely be attacked by the venom, causing their chi to reverse and allowing the poison to invade their meridians. He acknowledges that unraveling this venomous ability is like facing a specialist above the 20th heaven, seeing it as a valuable opportunity to test his limits. He thinks that if the poison within the city lord is like a massive mountain, then the chi within his own body is like the endless waves of the sea. After focusing intensely, the Proto shouts, "Detoxify." The city lord then wakes up, coughing out the remaining poison. Zikin shouts in concern for her father, but immediately turns, angrily yelling at the Proto and accusing him of poisoning the city lord. Yu blocks her kick and explains that her father's coughing is simply a reaction to expel the poisonous blood from his body. Now that the toxins have been expelled, he is out of danger. Dr. Chen approaches the bed and dismisses Yu's explanation as nonsense. insisting that the city lord is clearly on the brink of death. At that moment, the city lord wakes up and shouts, asking who said he was going to die. Everyone is shocked, and Tang Yu runs to her father, asking if he's okay. The city lord coughs again and remarks that he thought he was about to go to hell. He gets up and immediately thanks the Proto, calling him his savior. Zekin points at the Proto and tells her father that he's just a cursed member of the Zhou family and that, no matter what happens, he's not worth such gratitude. The city lord immediately slaps his daughter across the face and calls her ungrateful. He then questions how she dares to speak that way to the man who saved his life. Zikin falls to the ground and says that she's only concerned about him. However, the city lord yells, ordering her to bow before the Proto and apologize immediately. Yu steps forward and tells the city lord that his daughter greatly respects him, and since he has already reprimanded her, there's no need to escalate the situation further. The city lord listens to the Proto and agrees, but he comments that it's because he failed to discipline his daughter in the past that she displayed such shameless behavior in front of everyone. At that moment, Yu notices Dr. Chen trying to slip away and asks where he's planning to go. He reminds the doctor about their bet. Chen, nervous, asks if Yu really expects him to bow. Yu makes it clear that just moments ago, had he lost the bet, he would have lost his life. Therefore, he demands that the doctor kneel and apologize. Dr. Chen then kneels and begins bowing to the Proto, admitting his defeat. As he bows, Chen smashes his forehead against the ground, causing a wound to open. He thinks to himself that the boy will pay dearly for forcing him to endure such humiliation. Tang Yu, noticing the cut on the doctor's forehead, asks the Proto if Chen can stop now. Chen thinks to himself that he expected this, as girls like her are easy to deceive, and he only hurt himself a little. However, the Proto firmly states that he can't allow the doctor to stop, as they made a bet, and there's no going back. Chen must continue kneeling and bowing. Shocked, the doctor curses at the Proto. At that moment, the city lord orders the guards to escort the shameless doctor out of his sight. Later, as they drink tea, the city lord mentions that he heard everything that happened and knows that the Proto saved both his life and that of his daughter. Therefore, he says that if Yu needs anything, he shouldn't hesitate to ask. Yu, deep in thought, replies that since the city lord is offering, it would be rude to decline. He then explains that, after leaving the Zhou family, he has nowhere to go and still needs a place to stay. The city lord laughs and tells the Proto that, as his savior, he certainly can't treat him poorly. He adds that with Yu's talent and strength, the Zhou family must be blind for not recognizing his worth. The city lord slams his hand on the armrest of his chair and angrily remarks that he becomes furious whenever influential families are mentioned, and that the assassins were certainly sent by one of those families in the city. However, since he doesn't have proof, he hasn't been able to expose them. Yu comments that it's likely true, and that the assassins who tried to kill Tang Yu also used venom techniques. The city lord leans closer to the Proto and reveals that he's planning to organize a banquet and invite the city's leading families to show them that he's still alive. He then asks Yu if he can attend the banquet on behalf of the city lord's residents. Surprised by the invitation, Yu asks why. The city lord explains that the banquet gathers young talents from various families, and competitions among them are inevitable. Since his two daughters are not strong enough, he needs someone like Zhou Yu to maintain order, as he, being the city lord, cannot intimidate the younger generation directly. The Proto remarks that he's just a stranger. The city lord laughs, places a hand on his shoulder, and tells him that he is now part of the city lord's residence. He reassures him, saying that his daughters will rely on him during the event, and afterward, there will be a generous reward. Yu then humbly accepts. After he leaves, Zekin approaches her father and says that she had someone investigate and confirm that Zhou Yu indeed fled from the Zhou family. However, she adds that she's never heard of anyone so powerful within the family and wonders if someone with such strength might be hiding a secret. The city lord questions whether Zhou Yu could have saved him without possessing a hidden ability. He explains that when Zhou Yu treated him, the quality of the true energy transmitted was extremely high and stable, something he's never seen in someone so young. The city lord then reflects that the Prota is young and probably unmarried. Since he only has these two daughters, if Zhou Yu were to leave, it would be hard to rely on them alone to maintain the family's property. Therefore, he'll need to find a trustworthy son-in-law. Outside, the Prota is walking and talking with the evil goddess. He comments that the new house the city lord gave him isn't small, as large as that of a wealthy family, complete with servants and maids ready to attend to him. Tai Bai responds that it's just a house, and reminds him that when he saved the city lord, he used the Shura resurrection technique she had taught him. Therefore, even if the city lord gave him all his wealth, it still wouldn't be enough to repay the intervention. Yu remarks that she's asking for something quite difficult and explains that the city lord seems genuinely grateful. The warehouse is filled with spirit stones, herbs, and food for martial practitioners. Tai Bai agrees, stating that the Prota has gained a lot. Yu activates his power and asks the goddess what she means by gained enough. He makes it clear that everything he's mentioned also belongs to her. He then asks her to accept it, as he will soon bring it to her. Tai Bai smiles and comments that the Prota is quite sensible and that she wasn't wrong about him. She then asks what he desires, high-quality pills or divine weapons. Later, the Prota is in the forest of fierce beasts, located less than 48 kilometers from Longyam City. Demonic beasts frequently appear there, and warriors below the 10th heaven do not dare to approach. After finishing off several of these demonic beasts, the Prota comments that the movements of the Dark Sura are unexpectedly difficult to practice. After cultivating there for 3 days and 3 nights, his true energy reaches the 8th heaven. He knows this is a forbidden technique of gods and demons and cannot be mastered easily. At that moment, he turns around, startled, wanting to know what noise he is hearing. A huge bear, armored and furious, charges toward him. Yu quickly thinks that the bear's energy is as vast as that of a 13th heaven warrior. As the great bear approaches, the Prota realizes this is bad, knowing that if he takes a hit, he will die. However, he channels his power and considers this life-or-death situation perfect for surpassing his limits. He then uses the power of the 8th heaven, the explosive strike of the fierce demon from the path of the shadow Asura. The strike throws the bear away, but he shouts that the attack just drained all his true energy. He then notices that something emerged from the Bear King's body. Suddenly, this something enters his body, and he is alarmed, wondering what is happening. Tai Bai explains that the Prota is lucky, as within the defeated beast's body, there was a fragment of it. Absorbing and refining it quickly will greatly aid his practice. Yu is intrigued and comments that she previously mentioned her body was broken, and that if she could collect the fragments and rebuild her body, she could open the domain of the evil demon. He quickly asks if that's correct. Tai Bai confirms and explains that this fragment is just a small part. For now, she asks him not to think about the domain and focus on what the fragment can offer him. The Prota then sits and begins cultivating, wondering how a fragment can contain such powerful energy. He questions how terrifying the goddess's previous power must have been. Then, he begins to see flashbacks of someone fighting and wonders if it could be Tai Bai, and if, perhaps, these are her memories. Suddenly, the Prota feels something and realizes he is wearing an incredible armor. Looking at his hand, he notices that his true energy has condensed into a tangible armor, a skill possessed by those above the 15th heaven. Tai Bai explains to the Prota that the absorption of the fragments was more successful than she had imagined. In fact, they fused directly, and he understood her ancient evil demon battle armor. However, she notes that this technique consumes a lot of true energy, and he will only be able to maintain it for as long as it takes for an incense stick to burn. Yu is excited and comments that with just one fragment, he has already gained a huge advantage. and if he continues finding other fragments, it will be even more incredible. The Proto approaches the bear and thinks that the Great Bear failed to fuse the fragments successfully, which is why it was especially violent. He decides to use the bear's corpse to obtain pills in exchange, and realizes it is almost time for the banquet to begin. After some time, he returns and soon meets Tang Yuyu, who is excited to see him. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Zhou Rongui mentions that, unfortunately, his family suffered a misfortune and that one of his relatives acted despicably, which greatly angered his father. He also states that he has been looking for someone in recent days and discovered that this person was not home, so he wants to know where they went. The cultivator explains that the experts of the corpse poison sect attacked the old man, and he is undoubtedly half dead, merely pretending to be fine. Therefore, there is nothing to fear. He further comments that the old man's two daughters are truly beautiful, and if given the chance, he will definitely claim them as his own. The cultivator then calls Zhou Rongui to leave. Rongui thinks he heard that the boy before him is the #1 genius of the Zhao family, and that he had already reached the 13th heaven 3 years ago. He knows he definitely cannot face him in the tournament. Later, at the city lord's residence, the banquet is taking place. Zikin grabs everyone's attention and announces that the visitors that day are young talents from various families. However, she explains that her father is not feeling well, so the dinner will be hosted by her and her younger sister. The young cultivator quickly comments that it seems the city lord is about to die and asks if Zikin would consider marrying him so their families can unite. Yu becomes furious and says that the cultivator insulted her father again and was rude to her sister, so he is not welcome there. The cultivator grabs Yu's chin and says she doesn't understand the situation, but declares that once he marries her sister, Yu will become his concubine. At that moment, someone punches the cultivator in the face, telling him to get lost. The cultivator, irritated, demands to know who the Proto thinks he is to hit him like that. Zhou Rongyi is shocked to see that it's Yu and immediately shouts, asking what a bastard son is doing there. The Proto explains to the sisters that the cultivator who insulted Yu is a rude individual, and it doesn't hurt to teach him a lesson. The cultivator activates his Blazing Sun ability and charges at the Proto, shouting, asking how a mere bastard son, abandoned by the Zhou family, dares to teach a lesson. He then strikes the Proto. The cultivators present immediately comment that the technique is the release of internal energy, a skill available only to those of the 10th heaven or higher. However, Yu easily dissipates the technique, leaving the Zhao family member terrified. The Proto then hits him with a strike, throwing him away and making him crash onto a table. The cultivators are shocked, wondering how Yu managed to defeat Zhao Hongying in one blow, considering he is the young genius of the Zhao family and one of the best and strongest youths in the city. A member of the Zhao family runs to the young man and asks how he is. Hongying replies that his veins and meridians were destroyed by the Proto and that all his cultivation is gone. Overcome with rage, Zhao Huai charges at the Proto, using his 18th heaven power ability, shouting, asking Yu how he dares to render a Zhao family descendant useless. However, someone blocks Zhao Huai's attack. It's the city lord who immediately questions the elder, wanting to know why he is involving himself in a game between young people. Everyone is immediately shocked, wondering if the city lord was not on the verge of death, as rumors said he had been seriously injured. The city lord takes a deep breath and tells everyone he is in good health, just arrived late. He then shouts, asking who is spreading the rumor that he is unwell. Huai is alarmed and thinks that the city lord seems to have regained his strength. The Proto understands that the city lord arrived late on purpose because he wanted to lure the snake out of its hole and see which noble family would be the most scandalous. The cultivators comment that, apparently, the city lord is fine and that the young Zhou Yu seems quite confident. However, another cultivator comments that he is not so sure, as the Proto arrogantly incapacitated Zhao Hongying directly, and he fears the Zhao family definitely won't let it go. Zhao Huai shouts, asking the city lord if this is how his people behave, attacking the talents of noble families, and warns that if he chooses to protect someone out of personal interest, he should consider the consequences of the wrath of influential families. Zhou Rongyi points his finger at the Proto and shouts, saying that he actually committed a cruel act in front of everyone. He then asks the city lord to ensure justice, or else his family will be the first to reject it. The city lord shouts, calling the whole situation madness, and states that earlier, Zhou Yu acted on behalf of his family, and it was a fair competition. Therefore, Zhao Hongying was not up to the task. He then says that Hongying disrespected his two daughters and wants to meddle in everything. He asks Zhou Rongui if he really thought he wouldn't notice that. Yu asks the city lord not to be angry and assures him he will handle the matter. He then approaches Zhao Huai and explains that he incapacitated Hongying with a single blow. At that moment, the Proto states that he will give Huai the chance to deliver one strike, as he wants to see if Huai can hurt him. The city lord quickly grows concerned and asks the Proto if he's sure about this. Zichen, frightened, asks if he's gone mad and reminds him that Zhao Huai is an elder of the Zhao family, with strength reaching the 18th heaven. Zhao Huai laughs and asks the city lord if he heard Yu's words. He then summons his divine weapon, the fire hammer, and shouts, saying that the child who challenged him is seeking death and that the city lord will not be able to blame him for it. He declares that one move will be enough to eliminate the Proto. The cultivators are surprised and comment that this is the technique of condensing energy into a weapon, available only to those of the 15th heaven or higher. They also mention that it's the true fire energy of the Zhao family. Wasting no time, Zhao Huai unleashes his powerful attack. Yu activates his armor and reflects on how impressive the aura of a specialist above the 15th heaven is. He wants to test if he can overcome it. He proceeds to block the attack. Zichen quickly asks the Proto if he's okay. Yu thinks the attack was incredible, as, with a single strike, Huai managed to dismantle his evil god battle armor, and he realizes the difference in power is truly colossal. Yu responds to Zichen that he's fine and asks if she was worried about him. She replies that she doesn't care and only asked out of curiosity. Zhao Huai curses the Proto and questions how he is still standing. He then tells him to take another hit. At that moment, the city lord steps in front of the Proto and tells Zhao Huai that Yu had said he would have only one chance. He then declares that the matter is settled. Just then, Zhao Huai's divine weapon begins to crack, and he quickly notices it. Looking at the Proto, Huai wonders who he really could be. Yu crosses his arms and makes it clear to Huai that he already had his chance. The cultivator, furious, asks how the Proto dares to belittle his family. The other cultivators urge Huai not to act on impulse and say that the priority now is to save the young Hongying. The elder calms down, dispels his divine weapon, and orders Hongying to be taken to the doctor. Zhou Rongyi tells Huai there's nothing more to do there, so the Zhou family withdraws as well. He then warns the Proto not to think he can do whatever he wants just because he has the support of the city lord's mansion. He says that the mansion is nothing compared to his father, and that in the entire city of Longyuan, there are many people who can kill him. Yu shouts at his brother, saying that today is the city lord's banquet, so he won't waste time arguing for now. But he makes it clear that when it comes to a martial arts competition, they will see the results in the arena. The city lord approaches the Proto and comments that he didn't expect him to be able to block Zhao Huai's punch and is surprised by his strength, especially given his young age. He says that, this time, by strongly suppressing the Zhao family, the Proto earned enough prestige for the city lord's mansion, but warns him to be cautious of their revenge. Yu laughs and says they can try if they want because he's not worried, but he quickly thinks that it's time to collect more fragments of the fierce armor and give them even more surprises. Later, at the Zhou family residence, Huai is furious informing Zhou Mu that someone from the family left Hong Ying severely injured and demands an immediate explanation. Zhou Mu tells Huai to be patient and explains that the bastard son he's referring to was expelled from the family and that Zhao Huai can take revenge on him however he wishes. Huai shouts that if it weren't for the city lord getting in his way at that moment, he would have already killed the Prota. Zhou Mu replies that if Huai had brought the Prota back there, he would have executed him himself, according to family laws, thus restoring their honor. At that moment, a girl approaches and says that if Zhao Huai is uncomfortable killing the young Zhou Yu, she can do it. Huai is surprised and asks Elder Mu if she is his daughter. He explains that the girl is his newest concubine, named Jing Jing Jun. Huai is taken aback and asks how she could help him kill the traitorous son of the Zhou family. Jing Jing releases her energy conduction power of the 20th heaven and asks Huai if he thinks it would be advantageous to seduce the young Yu. Huai is startled and thinks that the energy she's releasing is extremely poisonous, likely the work of a master from the corpse poison sect, and that she is at least at the level of a sect elder. Jing Jing comments that she hadn't paid attention to Yu before and asks them to allow her, as the Prota's aunt, to take care of him and pamper him properly. 3 days later, in the Forest of Evil, the Prota is cultivating and quickly notices something. He wonders why he still can't advance to the 10th heaven, as when he advanced to the 9th, the process seemed fairly easy and simple. Tai Bai explains that at the 10th heaven, true energy is released, and at the 15th heaven, energy is condensed into form. She explains that this is the key point of both cultivation paths, which is why advancing is not easy. She then lies on the ground and comments that the most important thing is that her stomach is almost empty and that the Prota should hurry and find some sacrifices for her. Yu quickly questions her, saying he has sacrificed a lot for her in recent days. She replies that they were just small shrimp, not even reaching the 10th heaven and having no power. The Prota comments that if he wants to find stronger monsters to sacrifice, he must head deeper into the forest. As he walks, he thinks he's heard that the most powerful demonic beasts have strength exceeding the 20th heaven. At that moment, several eyes emerge from the forest, and the Prota shouts, asking who's watching him and demanding they stop hiding. Zhao Huai emerges from the forest and comments that the Prota is quite alert, but points out that this alone won't help him. He then summons his divine weapon and remarks that he didn't expect Yu to dare wander alone after offending the Zhao family. He tells him to prepare to face the consequences, as this time, the old city lord won't save him. The Prota activates his armor and shouts, asking Huai if he really thinks his strength is the same as before. The two charge at each other. Huai is thrown back, and surprised, asks the Prota how he managed to grow even stronger in just a few days. Yu is also thrown back and realizes that his true energy has been drained by almost 20%, but knows that this time, the battle armor wasn't destroyed. He concludes that if Zhao Huai is his only opponent, he might be able to defeat him. At that moment, Jin appears and embraces the Prota, making it clear that he has revealed a weakness. She then blows her venomous kiss ability onto his face. The Prota starts coughing and comments that he's seen her before. He then asks if she's Zhou Mu's new concubine. She gets serious and says it's rude of him, and he should call her aunt. She also explains that the poison she just introduced into his body is so powerful that not even a specialist of the 20th heaven could resist it. Huai laughs and tells the Prota that he knows nothing about her. He explains that the woman by his side is the famous elder of the corpse poison sect, Lady Jing Mi. Yu is shocked and asks why a concubine of Zhou Mu is an elder of a sect, and if she was the one responsible for attacking the city lord earlier. Jin kneels down and says that since the Prota is on the brink of death, she will tell him. She explains that the corpse poison sect reached an agreement with Zhou Mu to overthrow the city lord of Longyuan, and her role as his concubine is part of the plan. After that, the great families will take control of the city, and the future city lord will grant them half of Longyuan. Jin holds the Prota's face and says she didn't expect the Zhou family to still have a young man with such incredible talent as him. She states that the best option would be to turn him into a venomous slave so he could serve her. At that moment, Yu releases his terrifying dark aura and asks if she really wants him to become her slave. She is startled and asks how he can resist after being poisoned, but she quickly remarks that it may just be a desperate final effort before death. Yu stands up and charges toward Huai, who asks if the Prota really thinks he will drag him down with him. Yu attacks Elder Huai with force and sends him flying. While on the ground, Huai asks the Prota if he really believes that with just one attack, he could take him down. But as soon as he finishes speaking, he spits blood. The Prota approaches and says that, in fact, relying only on his strength to eliminate him would be a bit difficult. He then reveals that he expelled the poison from his body with that punch and transferred it into Huai's body. Huai is horrified, thinking that he had been famous in Longyuan City for decades, but now believes he will die at the hands of a child. Jin approaches the Prota and says that, apparently, he wasn't even poisoned and had just been pretending earlier. But she declares that she knows a mere ninth heaven cultivator couldn't have such a skill, so she asks if a demon resides within him. Yu comments that his aunt seems to have a keen eye and has noticed everything. He then uses the ancient method of the fierce god's sacrifice on Elder Huai. Tai Bai becomes excited and says that the corpse of a strong man at the 18th level is excellent, and she immediately asks the Prota what reward he would like from her. Yu says he might want some pills, but doesn't want her help with cultivation instead. He wants to advance directly to the 10th heaven. Tai Bai says that's a small request, and that she will help him open his meridians immediately. Jin is shocked and questions the aura surrounding her nephew, wondering if he truly has a demon inside him. She comments that she must capture him and force him to reveal all his secrets. At that moment, the Prota reaches the 10th heaven and comments that his body feels completely different. Tai Bai explains that, thanks to the recent sacrifice, part of the lost armor in her divine domain has been repaired, and that the Prota can now consume its energy and summon its projections. Jin releases her celestial aura in the form of serpents and warns Yu not to think he is invincible just because he had a special experience. The Prota immediately uses his ability and summons the snake-cutting sword. He remarks that to deal with snakes, that sword is the best option. Jin comments that the fact the Prota can form weapons from energy is astonishing for someone at the 10th heaven, and that he intrigues her more and more. The two begin their battle. It doesn't take long before the Prota easily destroys the celestial serpent. Jin is shocked and says it's impossible. The Prota approaches and says that, originally, he didn't intend to kill her, but now that he knows she's aware of his secret, he has no choice. Terrified, she begs him to wait, saying that if he kills her, the entire sect will not forgive him. She claims that the sect leader already has the power to surpass the 25th heaven, and that if she dies, he will certainly seek revenge to the bitter end. Tai Bai questions the Prota, asking if he's hesitant to eliminate her. She then extends her hand toward the cultivator and tells the Prota to watch the methods of a goddess. Tai Bai uses the celestial true energy locking seal on Jin, making her scream in pain. Tai Bai says she has already imprisoned her in the divine realm and will train her slowly. Yu smiles and says that he has gained a lot this time. He advanced to the 10th heaven, eliminated Zhao Huai, and captured a venomous cultivator of the 20th heaven. He knows it's time to return and absorb everything. Yu laments that, unfortunately, he didn't find any new fragments of the fierce god. Saying this, he departs while two creatures watch him. One of the creatures comments to the wolf that it didn't expect to be delayed even slightly, but the wolf certainly ran very fast. The creature also remarks that it doesn't understand how the human was lucky enough to obtain the fierce god's fragments, but makes it clear that sooner or later it will take them. Later, the Prota returns to the city lord's residence and Yu gets excited upon seeing him. She quickly comments that her father has been looking everywhere for him. At that moment, the city lord arrives and asks the Proto where he has been. Yu gives an awkward laugh and explains that he went to practice in the forest of evil monsters without giving prior notice, apologizing for causing concern. The city lord approaches the Proto and questions how he dared to go into the forest, asking if he was unaware that the Zhao family had placed a bounty on his head. Yu releases his power and says it doesn't matter, as he reached the 10th celestial realm and made great progress compared to before. The city lord, intrigued, asks the Proto if he really is in the 10th sky. He comments that, apparently, the Proto is advancing quickly and was lucky not to encounter Zhao Huai. Yu mentions that, in fact, he did encounter Zhao Huai and, although it was dangerous, ended up killing him. The city lord is astonished and quickly asks if the Proto is joking. However, Yu makes it clear that he is not joking. The city lord becomes even more intrigued and comments that the old Zhao Huai was an elder of the Zhao family, a prominent figure in Longyuan City. Therefore, he wants to know how the Proto managed to kill him. Yu, embarrassed, says he cannot reveal that. The city lord laughs and says he understands, as geniuses have their own secrets, so he will not ask further. He then explains that, when it comes to the great families of that city, the Zhao family is only the third most important. The leading families are Zhou and Yang, followed by Zhao, Liu, Chen, and Wang. However, he emphasizes that, with the Proto's current abilities, he will not lose to any young talent from any of these families and will definitely shine in the martial arts competition. Yu remarks that, in the tournament, the Zhou family will surely send the useless Rungi to fight. Therefore, he vows to teach him a lesson and embarrass the Zhou family. The city lord comments that other families will likely send their children to compete, but he knows the Proto is no longer part of the Zhou family. He then quietly asks what the Proto thinks about marrying his daughter and becoming the city lord's son-in-law. Yu, embarrassed, quietly replies that he is sorry but has no intention of marrying at the moment and asks the city lord to understand. He then explains that, regarding the qualification to practice, he will create his own sect and compete under the Zhou family name, but it will be the Zhou family of Zhou Yu. The city lord, disappointed, says it's fine and that the boy can do as he wishes. Some time passes, and the Proto is meditating. Tai Bai appears and immediately asks why he didn't accept the old man's proposal and marry one of the two sisters. He replies that, for now, he does not want to think about such things, emphasizing that his priority is to take revenge on the Zhou family. He then asks the goddess what happened to the woman she imprisoned. Tai Bai says she will personally take him to her divine realm so he can see for himself. She says this and promptly teleports the Proto to her divine realm. Yu, surprised, immediately asks why her divine realm looks so devastated. She explains that the realm shattered tens of thousands of years ago, and that if the Proto can fix it, the divine domain will be his to use as he pleases. After wandering through the realm, they arrive at a door, and Tai Bai explains that this is the Void Prison, a place dedicated solely to imprisoning people. Although most of its functions are currently useless, it can still imprison someone insignificant from the 20th sky. Upon entering the prison, Jin quickly becomes nervous when she notices Yu's presence and asks if he came to discuss a possible collaboration. He laughs and says he doesn't need her. Jin tries to provoke him, stating she didn't expect him to have actually obtained the evil god's inheritance, and emphasizing that, with his current abilities, he cannot maintain it. She threatens him, warning that if anyone finds out, he will undoubtedly be finished. Then, she screams, saying that her sect leader and his father are old friends, and that the Zhou family and the Corpse Poison sect have always advanced and retreated together. She then claims that if the Proto obediently hands over the evil god's inheritance to the sect, they can spare his life. Yu takes a deep breath, walks up to her, and slaps her across the face. He comments that, apparently, She misunderstood something and makes it clear that he didn't spare her life out of fear of the corpse poison sect. He then grabs her face and says he won't kill her because she can be his slave, but first, he will need to train her. Tai Bai summons several cruel tools and says it's time for her training, assuring her not to worry about the torture, as she won't die after all. They're in the Void Prison. Jin is terrified by the tools the goddess summoned for the torture. Hours later, after the torture, Jin is crying, admitting she made a mistake and won't dare disobey again. She then collapses on the ground, weakened, and calls Yu master, declaring that from that moment on, she will be his servant and that he can give her any order. He tosses one of the torture tools aside and says that something isn't right, reminding Jin that she is Jo Mu's concubine and an elder of the corpse poison sect. Powerless, Jin responds that she only had a cooperative relationship with Master Jo Mu and that, now, her entire body and soul belong to the Prota, with no remaining ties to the corpse poison sect. Yu comments that, apparently, they will first need to get rid of certain people who won't stop until they reach their goals. He then asks Jin to reveal everything about the collaboration between the corpse poison sect and the Jo family. Jin quickly explains that although the corpse poison sect has a bad reputation among the so-called righteous forces, behind the scenes, some powerful families have allied with them. Among the important figures connected to the corpse poison sect is Jo Mu, the Prota's father, who holds a special status. The sect's elder explains that Jo Mu arrived alone at the main temple of the corpse poison sect and was personally received by the sect leader. At that time, the leader had already reached the 25th heaven, but was still afraid of him. They collaborated several times afterward, including in the assassination of the city lord. Jin reveals that, in fact, everyone was following Jo Mu's orders, and that he has been investigating the evil god's inheritance all along, likely with secret ambitions behind it. The Prota becomes intrigued and questions whether his father is truly after the fragments of the evil god, knowing the old man is sly and has hidden more deeply than expected. Therefore, he cannot let him know that he already has the power to kill Zhao Huai and subdue Jin. Aware of this, the Prota promptly asks Tai Bai if she has any methods to control servants. She responds that he asked the right person, as she specializes in that. She then uses the Shura parasite art on Jin. A strange energy enters through the elder's mouth, and she screams loudly. She quickly asks the Prota what he did, feeling intense heat in her belly. The goddess reveals that she had just asked Yu to plant the divine seed, containing a bit of her power, inside her body. From that moment on, the Prota will know her every move and can make her explode and die at any time. The elder begins trembling and feels her body behaving strangely. Yu approaches her and reassures her, calling her his dear aunt and saying there's no need to be afraid. He then instructs her to return to Jo Mu and observe his movements. He makes it clear that if the old Mu asks why she failed the assassination, she should tell him it was due to the city lord's interference or something similar. As long as she follows his orders, he will not kill her. The next day, in Longyuan City, the central square is filled with cultivators. One of them announces that registrations for the city's martial arts competition are open that day and that all young participants are welcome. Another cultivator mentions that the Taiwan dynasty's higher hierarchy has placed great importance on the event, sending emissaries to oversee it, and that the prizes for the winner are generous. People quickly begin commenting that the tournament is usually an internal competition for some families, but this time it will be different, as influential figures are supporting it, making it larger in scale than before. At that moment, a cultivator in charge of the registrations uses his power, lifts a large stone, and announces that to register, participants must first pass a test by leaving a mark on the stone he is holding. Once they do, their registration will be successful. Yu immediately heads to the testing area and declares his intention to participate. The crowd recognizes him and starts murmuring, wondering if he is the disgraced son of the Jo family who tried to abuse his sister-in-law. Yu hears this turns with a sinister expression, and the cultivators recoil in fear. Suddenly, a cultivator leaps from the crowd, lands directly at the test site, and sarcastically asks if all he needs to do is punch a dumb stone. He then uses his explosive fist technique, delivering a punch to the stone before jumping back, clutching his hand, and shouting in pain, asking what kind of stone that is, as it feels harder than steel. The cultivators are shocked and demand to know why a cultivator at the 12th heaven couldn't even leave a mark on the stone. Yu, intrigued, wonders if there is some mystery to the stone, as he noticed that most of the previous cultivator's punch force was absorbed. Tai Bai laughs and asks if the Prota has finally discovered the trick. Then, she explains that the test doesn't measure how much strength a person has, but how well they can control it. At that moment, Yang Shuanggen appears and says that it's a waste of time, but mentions he wants to be part of the show. Yu thinks he has seen him somewhere before. One of the organizers asks the cultivator if he's truly the genius of the Yang family, and whether they didn't already select him internally to participate in the tournament. Shuanggen, furious, releases his energy and shouts that he doesn't need any reserve spot because his real abilities are enough. He then prepares his punch and strikes the stone with full force, creating a crack. The cultivators present are stunned and quickly comment that this was expected from the genius of the Yang family. Shuanggen laughs and says it's no big deal, adding that he didn't even use his full strength. Yu then announces it's his turn. People start laughing, saying this will be fun, and ask if the Prota didn't see Shuanggen's performance, and whether he really thinks he has a chance. At that moment, the Prota releases his 10th heaven power, and with the aura of the Ashura demon, punches the stone, creating a small crack. The crowd is impressed and starts questioning if he can actually leave marks on the stone. However, Shuanggen points out that the Prota's mark is clearly much smaller than his. Even if Yu enters the competition, he says, he'll only be a sacrificial pawn. He then shouts for everyone to observe how exhausted Yu looks, and claims that he must have given it his all. Shuanggen insists that Yu is being overestimated and will only be humiliated during the official competition, even if he passed the test. One of the test supervisors tells the Prota that he has passed. Yu thanks him. Shuanggen thinks the Prota is somewhat capable, but knows he's far from being a real opponent and likely used all his strength. However, Shuanggen is confident, knowing that he himself only used half his strength during the test. Meanwhile, Yu laughs internally, knowing he used less than half of his true strength and that it was enough to fool them without raising suspicion. He can't wait for the competition to begin. Meanwhile, at Zhou Mu's mansion, Mu is furious upon learning that Zhou Yu isn't dead and on top of that, killed Zhao Huai. Mu calls it absurd and recalls that Zhao Huai was an elder of the Zhao family with a cultivation level of the 18th heaven. Jin, following the Prota's plan, tells Zhou Mu that it was obvious young Yu wasn't a match for her or Elder Huai, but she explains that the old city lord was secretly protecting Yu. After killing Zhao Huai during the attack, the city lord imprisoned her, and she couldn't do anything. Zhou Mu, enraged, thinks he didn't expect the city lord to personally protect the illegitimate son. He concludes that the old city lord must be aware that his two daughters have no future and is now trying to pair them with anyone. At that moment, Zhou Rongui arrives, asking if his father had called for him. Mu mentions that the tournament is about to start and that he has something important to say. He then asks Jin to leave them alone with his son. As she leaves, Jin thinks that, judging by Zhou Mu's mysterious expression, he's probably about to pass on his secret techniques to Zhou Rongui. She knows it's best to inform Yu about this. After reporting everything to the Prota, he concludes that Zhou Mu indeed plans to pass his abilities on to Zhou Rongui. Otherwise, with Rongi's current skills, the Prota knows his brother isn't a threat. Since Jin is already infiltrated, it will be very convenient to monitor the Zhou family's future movements. Yu then asks the goddess why she brought him there to the divine realm. She explains that it's the recreational training field of her divine realm, where opponents the Prota has faced before can be recreated. However, she clarifies that, due to severe damage and insufficient information, those with immense power can't be recreated temporarily, but the current setup is sufficient to recreate old Zhao Huai. Knowing this, the Prota quickly activates his evil god battle armor and asks if such a function really exists. As she just mentioned, Tai Bai explains that when the Prota previously defeated Huai, it was merely due to luck. Now, she asks him to try facing him head-on. Tai Bai also adds that since the Prota is so eager to fight, she'll increase the difficulty. For the next 100 moves, you won't be allowed to attack, only defend, and must ensure the battle armor doesn't completely break. Yu is shocked by the condition and asks if it's really necessary. However, Huai wastes no time, summons his divine weapon, and charges at the Prota. Huai immediately unleashes his 20th heaven power and activates his fire hammer ability. Yu must withstand the old man's strike. Tai Bai remarks that this version of Zhao Huai is even stronger than the last time. While blocking the attack, the Prota thinks it's no wonder this version is enhanced. He feels his armor about to shatter and his arms going numb. The goddess points to the Prota's armor, noting that the presence of cracks indicates it's still not solid enough, and that his mastery of martial arts is still quite weak. Yu becomes excited and says he's going to test something. He then releases even more of his power. Tai Bai praises him, saying that wasn't bad, and explains that every time his power is condensed, the armor becomes stronger, and the damage he takes is reduced. As the Prota battles old Huai, the goddess says she'll give him a bit more power. Yu focuses, and condensing his power further, evolves his armor into a more advanced form, easily blocking Huai's attacks and countering with his intense aura, sending the old man flying. Tai Bai smiles, saying the Prota managed to understand the advanced form of the evil god's armor on his own, demonstrating impressive comprehension. As a reward, the goddess tells him she'll teach him some new moves that day. She then starts demonstrating the moves and mentions that, in the past, with these techniques, she once split a mountain and a sea spanning 10,000 kilometers in a single strike. Yu summons his sword and uses the double-edged sword that cuts evil technique, repeatedly attacking old Huai's body and knocking him far away. However, Yu starts trembling and looking at his hand, comments that the move he just used is very powerful, but wonders why he's feeling a bit weak. Tai Bai explains that the technique is extremely powerful, but consumes a lot of energy, and he'll probably only be able to use it 3 times a day. Night falls, and as the Prota walks through his residence, he hears someone calling him. It's Zikin, who mentions she heard he signed up for the martial arts tournament. He bows to her and confirms that he did, adding that, who knows, maybe they'll meet on the platform. He asks for her understanding. Zikin takes a deep breath and says her father told her that her cultivation is rather ordinary and that there's no need for her to participate in the tournament. Therefore, she has decided to withdraw. Yu comments that it's a shame she's giving up, but expresses concern that the former city lord might also be disrespected by the major families because of this. He then asks Zikin if she would accept his help in her cultivation. She's confused and asks what he means. Yu places his hand on her shoulder and releases his power while she wonders about the sensation she's feeling, as it seems like a warm energy is continuously being injected into her body. Time passes, and the day of the tournament arrives. A cultivator announces that the long-awaited martial arts tournament has finally begun, and explains that the event will be fully supervised by a superior sent from the Tai dynasty, ensuring fairness and transparency. Yu reflects that the Tai dynasty covers a vast territory, spanning millions of kilometers, and that, in comparison, Longyuan City is merely a somewhat prosperous city. The tournament supervisor explains that, in the Tai dynasty, martial culture is prominent and that the top 5 participants in the tournament will receive generous rewards. First place will receive the precious ancient elixir he is holding, the Elixir of Infinite Gold. Tai Bai explains to the Proto that it's a golden pill of infinity, and that, since her divine domain is in ruins, she can no longer create this type of pill. She then tells him that if she consumes it, it will replenish her divine power. The goddess tugs on the Prota's ear and tells him to listen carefully. She says he must win first place and offer her the golden pill, promising that if he does, she will continuously reward him. Yu responds that he already knows this and that. Even if she hadn't said it, his goal is also to be crowned champion. At that moment, one of the tournament organizers explains that, due to the large number of participants in this edition, an elimination round will first be held to select the true elites. All participants will be sent to a field located on the forest outskirts, filled with fierce and evil creatures. Yu wonders if the tournament organizers are trying to test them with monsters. Suddenly, Joe Rongi approaches the Prota and comments that, apparently, his bastard little brother has entered the competition. He says he hopes Yu doesn't get eliminated too early because he plans to make him kneel in front of everyone during the main competition. Yu walks away without saying a word, but thinks that his brother's aura has strengthened considerably, and that Joe Mu has undoubtedly trained him. However, he knows that, regardless, with Rongi's current talent, it would be impossible for him to progress so quickly in such a short time. Later, in the evil forest, all the competitors are gathered, and one of the organizers explains that the area has already been surrounded by the rest of the organizers. He tells the competitors they can spread out and enter when ready. He then instructs everyone to wait there for a full 3 hours, and at the end, those still holding their tokens will advance to the next stage. Yu observes that the token he's holding contains a unique chi mark and cannot be forged. It becomes clear that the competition is very different from previous ones and has a much larger scale. Suddenly, the Prota hears someone shouting about monsters and soon sees a massive, fierce bear. Yu realizes that the monsters are indeed part of the test. The colossal bear begins attacking nearby cultivators, tossing them aside. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, Joe Mu comments that this is the territory of fierce, evil creatures, and that many formidable beasts are roaming freely. He then wonders if using such beasts to test the participants will result in many casualties. He laughs, saying that the Overseer has a cultivation level of the 30th heaven, a realm where energy can be converted into living beings. The cultivator chuckles and remarks that the Zhou family patriarch is indeed insightful and correct. All those spectral beasts were created from his true spiritual energy. However, the tournament supervisor emphasizes that his cultivation has its limits, so the strength of the energetic creatures won't exceed the 15th heaven. Back where the Prota is, he attacks the fierce bear, slamming it hard against a large tree. Yu quickly realizes that the evil beasts are condensed with true spiritual energy, meaning they can cause harm but won't kill. The bear vanishes, and a pill appears in its place. Yu comments that people from that time are too soft and that the pill from the bear is a recovery pill, serving as a reward for defeating the creatures there. However, he knows it's a pity, as those pills hold no value to him. Suddenly, the Prota hears someone shouting that they've finally found him and that he'll pay for everything. It's Zhao Hongying, accompanied by his friends. Hongying remarks that the rules clearly state they must stay there for 3 hours, but they don't mention anything about not attacking other participants. Yu wastes no time and questions the young cultivator, asking if he wasn't supposed to be incapacitated. Hongying shouts that the Prota used dirty tricks against him last time and that it wasn't real skill. He then unleashes his power, frightening his friends, while yelling that when he was crippled, he felt so ashamed and angry that he wanted to commit suicide. He makes it clear to the Prota that if it weren't for the fire spirit revered by his family, which later manifested and granted him a divine pill, he feared he wouldn't have another chance in life to seek revenge. Hongying's friends tell the Prota he should regret offending Hongying. Without wasting time, the young cultivator uses the Zhao family's secret technique, the the power of the 14th heaven, blazing sun. However, Yu has no interest in prolonged conversation and, before the young master can react, lands a powerful punch while commenting that he talks too much nonsense. Hong Ying becomes furious and begins insulting the Prota. Yu calmly states that this is a martial arts tournament and asks Hong Ying if he thinks it's just a child's game. He then steps on and breaks Hong Ying's token, warning him to remember that, just as he was once crippled, it could happen again. The other cultivators are shocked, wondering how the Prota could be stronger than the young master. Yu shouts, asking the cultivators if they will withdraw from the tournament voluntarily or if they need his help with that. Tai Bai, intrigued, comments that the Prota is capable of crippling the brat directly in training, so why make it seem like a surprise attack? Yu explains that Zhao Hongying's current abilities pose no threat to him, and incapacitating him openly wouldn't help him conceal his true strength. Therefore, there's no need to complicate things unnecessarily. Meanwhile, in another part of the evil forest, Zekin is fighting against a giant wolf. She tells her friends to step back, saying she will handle it alone. Zekin recalls that if it weren't for Zhou Yu transferring part of his power to her, she wouldn't have been able to hold out for long in the tournament preliminaries. The Crimson Wolf prepares to attack, while Miss Tang thinks that the other participants, defeated by the demonic beasts, are only injured, not killed. For that reason, she knows she must do everything she can to advance to the main competition. At that moment, a massive gorilla appears and delivers a powerful blow to the Crimson Wolf. Zishin immediately senses trouble, recognizing the gorilla's murderous intent. After finishing off the wolf, the massive gorilla grows even more enraged. Zekin tells her friends to flee immediately, realizing something is wrong with the beast. She then uses her true energy release of the icy 10th heaven and freezes the gorilla. Turning around, she thinks this is the perfect opportunity to escape. However, the gorilla begins to release its power, causing cracks to form in the ice. Zishin, terrified, can't believe the strength of the demonic beast. It doesn't take long before the gorilla breaks free from the ice prison. It then prepares a punch and attacks with full force where Miss Tang stands. But as it lifts its fist, the gorilla realizes it hit nothing and is confused by what just happened. Yu had grabbed Miss Tang and saved her at the last moment. She immediately asks him what he was doing there. Yu explains that he sensed she was in danger. As they return to the ground, the Prota starts wondering about the gorilla and whether he should use his true abilities. At that moment, Zekin asks him to look up, pointing to a large firebird soaring above them. The bird lands in front of the gorilla, and the Prota comments that it's fine because apparently, the phoenix is also made of the true energy of the person who conjured it. He notes that it seems to be enough to scare off the massive gorilla. A girl hiding behind a tree observes the scene and thinks she initially wanted to test this Zhou Yu's strength. She wonders if he could be the one who invaded the forest and stole the fragments before. The Prota senses someone's presence and quickly asks who is there, but he realizes that the person has already escaped. He concludes that their speed is impressive and wonders if it could be another participant. Tai Bai laughs at the Prota and says he noticed it too late. Yu asks the goddess if she had already detected the person's presence, and, if so, why she didn't say anything earlier. She tells him to focus on the lesson, explaining that knowing the opponent's identity is crucial. Zekin approaches the Prota and asks what they should do since her energy is nearly depleted. She suggests they find a place to hide and wait for the other participants to be eliminated. Yu disagrees, saying that the competition isn't that simple and that it would be better to hunt the demonic beasts together. Elsewhere in the forest, Yang Shuanggen is excited, commenting that the demonic beasts have some interesting tricks. However, he knows it's a pity they still can't force him to reveal his true skill. Nearby cultivators are impressed by Yang Shuanggan's strength, remarking that he killed a 15th heaven demonic beast in less than 20 moves. They add that they hope not to encounter someone like him in the main competition. Meanwhile, in another area of the forest, Zhou Rongyi is holding a cultivator by the collar, demanding to know why he hasn't handed over all the pills he's carrying and withdrawn from the competition. The terrified cultivator quickly surrenders, saying he's quitting and will give up all the pills he has. With a sinister look, Joe Rongi states that it's too late for the cultivator to beg and that he won't just kill him, but will also wipe out his entire family after the competition. At that moment, the phoenix appears and warns Joe Rongi that punches and kicks don't have eyes, and injuring or killing an opponent during the competition isn't considered a violation of the rules. However, killing a participant who has already surrendered is strictly forbidden. Joe Rongui thinks to himself that these demonic beasts were definitely created by the envoy overseeing the tournament. Later, in another part of the evil forest, the Proto and Zekin arrive along with the other competitors. Zekin comments that she didn't expect so many people to be eliminated, while the Proto wonders if the tournament organizers deliberately allowed this many people to advance to the next round. When the cultivators notice the Proto's presence, they immediately start mocking him, saying they never expected the expelled failure of the Zhou family to make it to the next round. They suggest that he must have survived by hiding somewhere. The Tai Dynasty representative announces that the preliminary round has ended and that the 32 participants who killed demonic beasts are authorized to advance. Some cultivators, shocked, comment that they thought simply surviving until the end would be enough to move on, which is why they didn't kill any demonic beasts. The Tai Dynasty representative then declares he will announce the list of approved participants and begins with Yang Shuanggan, stating that he eliminated 18 demonic beasts, 2 of which were at the 15th heaven level. Next, the organizer announces that the lone cultivator Zhou Yu eliminated 22 demonic beasts, 5 of which were at or above the 15th heaven level. Hearing this leaves Yang Shuangyan stunned, as he didn't believe anyone would surpass him, let alone Zhou Yu.